perception of our fistula of any kind. So, coming back at the beginning of this video, we started discussing about the provisional crown, because the provisional crown had long margins and was the reason behind the inflammation of the soft tissue. So the question is where to stop doing provisional in the margins. We have to understand that when we prepare with our bars in a vertical approach, sometimes we have no perception of how deep are we going in the soft tissue. So in the day zero, this is the result. We can have this wall you see on your left, you have this wall that it is the wall that has been prepared by the bar. The bar, of course, going between the foot and the soft tissue, there is a sort of separation, that it is something that you see, with the drilling also of the inner part of the soft tissue with the connective tissue. But after 21 days, we know that there is the healing of the soft tissue on this surface. And you can see here, over me, you can see that on the part that we have prepared with the bar, we have the healing of the junctional epithelium, and just on the top we have the free area. The problem is that we are not able exactly to understand at the day zero when the junctional epithelium will end its position and where we will have the open sulcus itself. So the problem is that the day zero, the bar has arrived to the point. And because the bar has arrived to the point, you are able, if you want, to realign your provisional to this point. So when we do the provisional at the day of the preparation, our provisional can start from the first yellow line, so exactly where our bar has finished its work, or maybe a little bit shorter, or maybe a little bit shorter, or maybe a little bit more shorter. And this is what happens when we shape our provisional inside the area that should and will be covered by the junctional epithelium. The final result will be an inflamed tissue. Now the problem is that an inflamed tissue is very hard to put cords for doing correct impression, and it's an inflamed tissue. It's not a stable one. Because this is the situation. In an ideal world, we would like to prepare and to know exactly after 21 days after the healing where the junctional epithelium will finish, so that we can place ourselves outside. Because this is what we want. What we want, is this. We want to place our provisional crown where I did the green dots, not the black dots. Because if we place the provisional in the black dots, during the healing, the tissue will try to go in that area and will find the provisional crown, and you will obtain an inflammation. Instead, we want to place our provisional in the free area of the sulcus, so in the green area. But the day of the preparation, on the day zero, is extremely difficult sometimes to understand in the sulcus where the green area, we can say, finish and the black area starts. So we have to give a sort of rule in order to avoid this kind of complication. And the rule is that if we consider the full 8, we can say, of this problem is much more frequent in the interproximal tissue. So what is the point? If we consider that we have, let's say, 3-4 millimeters of height of papilla, we know that in a patient without periodontal complications, we know that the height of the free sulcus is around 1.5 millimeters. But when we work with our bar, even if you are quite gentle, there is a sort of peeling of the soft tissue. So what happens is that we remove a part of the gingiva, including the part of the soft tissue of the part of the free sulcus. So the reality is that the area where we can rely our provisional in the real world in a patient without periodontal problems is less than 1 millimeter. This is the reason because when I reline my provisional, after relining, I mark with a pencil where I am on the crown, and after, when I remove the provisional crown, I know exactly that the black line is where the gingiva is, and all the portion of the provisional that it is inside the soft tissue is the area of the provisional crown that it is going subgingivally. At this point, so I can cut, I can shorten this margin. Okay, this is the subgingival area of the provisional, so that I can check that maximum 1 millimeter, in my experience, always less, because 1 millimeter is the maximum, in my opinion. I always try to be much less than 1 millimeter, and if I have no special needs, I try to be even shorter. I will show you. So I place again the provisional crown, I can mark again with the black line, and this is the result after 3 months of provisional restoration of provisional crown, where the crown, the subgingival portion of the crown, is placed correctly into the soft tissue. Another case, you see, here there is a premolar with a huge decay. I did the vertical preparation. You see here we are at time 0. Here we have also an inverted shoulder approach. Look the beauty of the inverted shoulder and the enamel, because we know that dentin is convex, is concave, and enamel is convex. So placing an inverted shoulder on this part of the abutment, in the middle or in the coronal half, you are able to give more space to our technician, still preserving the whole coronal, the whole dentinal core and part of the enamel. Look here, all the enamel prism cut by my bar. What I do in area where the retention is enough and at the same time I have no aesthetic problems, I usually try to stay never inside the soft tissue, because the healing of the soft tissue without provisional is always amazing with vertical preparation. So what I do is to be short when I can. And look what happens. This is not the polished crown, but I did the photo in this moment. But just to understand, this is the crown at time 0 after preparation, because the margin was slightly touched by the bar. And it is the same patient after 2 weeks. You see that there is a regrowth of the soft tissue. So what happens? That if we do a margin on the day 0 that it is subgingival, with the healing, with the growth of the soft tissue, that margin will be too much deeper. And this will lead to inflammation. Look here, the provisional crown placed on the model. And remember the image we have shared before, the histologic section. This is the edge where the bar has arrived, but this is where the provisional restoration is stopping. And here is instead the final crown, atercal. You see? The final crown instead is trimmed by the technician in order to go in the right way in the sulcus. And you have perfect soft tissue in this case. Another case, here I had this tooth with a huge discromy. The patient was complaining about the color of this tooth. This was the main reason, because we did the crown. I did the shoulder, inverted the shoulder very cervical in order to give more space to my technician, in order to hide the color of this abutment. Look here, provisional restoration, time 0. I did the photo meanwhile waiting the hardening of the tendon. And look here, the same situation after 2 weeks. Look, the regrowth of the soft tissue. And here is the final crown. Again, same concept. So, we have to be very careful about the position of the margins of our provisional crown. This is something that we are very careful about. When I work in non-aesthetic areas and the retention is enough, because this is another important part, the retention has to be enough. The retention like so the parallelism of the walls of the crown, the height of the crown. I tend to work with almost equigingival provisional on in a lot of cases 0.5. And you have to be very careful about the interproximal area, because that is the part where most of the mistakes are made. Because a lot of people, especially people doing the BOPT approach, say that it is mandatory for provisional to stay in the sulcus for the correct healing of the soft tissue, for the thickening of the soft tissue, and for other reasons. But my experience is that the healing of the soft tissue with vertical preparation is amazing without provisional. So I think that unless we have to do some special things like moving soft tissue, for example, in aesthetic areas in order to do two centrals with the same zenith, with the same soft tissue, or other special things like, for example, what can I say, managing diastema, for example. But in all the other cases, in my opinion, the soft tissue will heal perfectly even without the provision in the sulcus. I just want to share you a mistake I did some time ago doing this rehabilitation, because this mistake is quite interesting, because I did a full arch rehabilitation of this patient with this situation. This is the situation, the preoperative situation. I did a small crown lengthening. There was a bascule of the occlusal plane. This is the vertical preparation of these abutments. Okay, what I did, without recognizing the mistake, I did a mistake in the preparation of the canine, and you know, there was a sort of edge supragingivally. I did this sort of mistake. Yeah, even to experienced people. So my technician was not able to go over that area because it was something like this, okay? There was the preparation, there was an undercut. I told to the patient that there was a small problem, easy to overcome, and that was that yellow area over the canine. And the patient asked me, where is this problem? After a while, she has been able to understand what I was speaking about. And when I told her that this was not a problem, but that we need other 30-45 minutes appointment and one anesthesia in order to fix this problem, she told me, to see this small yellow part is not at all a problem for me. So I told her that if this was not a problem, because this is just an aesthetic problem, this was perfectly fine to go on with the work. But what is interesting at this point is that, look, we have a look at how much root, at how much tooth we have exposed. Look here. So we can say that in this area the provisional is for sure short, and for sure also the definitive crown, because the definitive crown is this. We need just to layer ceramic on the top of this. The work on the model, you see that also on the model the crown is short because there is, and you can appreciate a little bit better the undercut, maybe. Of course, I've been lucky because there was also a slow smile line, so the patient never did a concern about this. But it's interesting to see after 6 months, the patient came back to my observation, and look, the healing of the soft tissue and the vertical regrowth. What was a 2 mm supragingival margin now is almost a juxtagingival margin. So, if you want my opinion, putting provisional in the sulcus is something that we have to do just for very detailed needs, like diastema, like improving anterior soft tissue, or because we have not enough retention for the retention of the provisional crown. But if we talk about the healing of the soft tissue we can go with slightly short provisional in most of the cases. You see, again, so we don't need to go subgingially with our provisional restoration in order to obtain the healing of the soft tissue. The provisional restoration has a different task, but not to help the healing. Look here the difference between time 0 and time 6 months. And I am quite sure that if I see again the patient that I have to do, the situation is even better. You see that we have something like this also on the central. Look, on the central incisors, look here over me. You see there is a small portion of the root, and look again on the photo on your left. The soft tissue are covering everything. Okay, so this is everything about this part on the provisional crowns. Provisional crowns, we do provisional crowns for many reasons. For keeping the position of the abutment in order to avoid extrusion, in order to avoid, we can say, the tilting, in order to avoid sensitivity, like in a case like this, even if this patient had zero problems with sensitivity. But because when we drill, for example, for a bridge, or for a case like this, a vital tooth, we need to protect from cold, from hot, from sensitivity of the abutment. But if we speak between the relation between provisional restoration and soft tissue healing, soft tissue will heal perfectly, even without provisional restoration, so we can work with short one. This is everything about the management of provisional restoration, about how long we have to go with the margins. We will see another video, other parts about the management of the provisional. Thank you for looking at this video. See you on the next video of this video course. Bye guys!